Hi, I'm Faraz Khan from iTrack Recruitment, and welcome to the Low Code Podcast, where we're dedicated to increasing awareness and appreciation of the power of low code. In this podcast, we'll hear from developers about their career journeys and how low code has enabled them to achieve new levels of success and innovation. So let's go. Hi, Menno, how are you?
I'm very good. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Thank you for agreeing to take part in the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. This will be a lot of fun. That's
Yes, it will, it
the
will.
plan, right? All right.
Yeah, I was eager to get you on, so it was good to bump into you in Denver and ask you in person to get you. Probably had no choice.
Exactly. I was harassed.
Yeah,
No,
exactly, exactly.
all good.
So yeah, most people probably know who you are, but it'd be good to start with a bit of introduction, who you are, where you're from.
All right. So I'm Menno. I'm originally from the Netherlands. I'm known as the UX guy at OutSystems. I've been trying to get rid of that name for a while, but it doesn't work so well. Yeah, I'm a neuroscientist by training. Very passionate about art, architecture, and anything designed rather than digital things. But I took a wrong turn somewhere and I ended up in IT, and I love it here. So
Yeah, nice, nice. So going back to kind of the beginning of your career, did you start kind of in the UX side straight away after your kind of
um,
studies?
yes and no. So I did my PhD, and then eventually you need to earn money, right? So I think
Yeah,
I just got a job in London.
yeah.
Um, And I was a user operations manager, which is a very um how do you say that? Convoluted term for customer support.
Yeah, okay.
But it was kind of on the UX side because we had a
Mm,
huge exposure to a large network of users. And yes, you needed to deal with teams that were handling complaints and whatever, but
mm,
there were also like understanding the behaviors. Why do people go there? Why do people complain? Where do people pay? Where do people
mm,
sign up? Where do people sign off? And that really started to trigger the UX side of things for me, like
mm,
understanding how that business worked. So it wasn't really designing, but it was
mm.
really heavily
Yeah.
interacting with users.
That was at the very famous dating app, right?
That was at the very famous dating app, correct? Which actually is fascinating because I think users they lose a bit of the now we work in enterprise, right? We build
Mm,
large systems and whatever.
mm.
But on the dating app, it's a very personal, private
Yeah,
environment, and people
yeah,
are themselves and they are just
yeah,
playing on their phone, doing whatever.
yeah,
No one is watching over their shoulder, they think.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and no, but you have such a huge amount of data. It was actually
Yeah.
that data part was really fascinating to see.
Yeah, I could imagine. Like it's quite different, isn't it? Quite unique. There's
Exactly.
thousands of people kind of on that.
Millions of actions
Millions,
like
yeah,
per
millions. Yeah,
minute.
yeah, yeah.
Like it's no,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And then from there, you moved on to OutSystems.
Yeah, so well, as you may know, some people
Yes.
love the UK, some people don't. I think in in London, for me, I liked it there, but I was eventually like the working life in London, if you have a beginner
Yes.
level salary and a job can be pretty rough.
Yes.
And I was just looking around, like where do I want to go? I was ready for an adventure, go somewhere that I'd never been before. So I applied to a bunch of jobs outside of Europe, inside of
Mm.
Europe, and I had some offers, one from Taiwan, one from Sweden, and one from
Wow.
Portugal. Um, and it was kind of like a randomized choice at the time.
Ah, really?
And
Okay. Yeah.
Lisbon was the one that won. So then we went on a train with all our stuff and arrived at
Yeah.
the station in Lisbon, and that's how my journey at OutSystems started.
Amazing.
So
When
yeah.
you were kind of going through the three offers, had you kind of, when you were considering OutSystems, had you heard of low code before?
Actually, not at all. So
Oh wow. Okay.
it was really a random start.
Yeah.
And it was really, I wanted a smaller company. I wanted an international company, and I wanted a fast growing and innovative company. Um, and I don't know, it just felt right at the time. It just felt like this is a good choice. Um, my partner at the time had a
Mm.
strong preference for the climate there rather than in the other options. So Lisbon it was, and that
Yeah.
has been a great choice. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. And then you did a few other roles in between, but you're
yeah.
back at OutSystems. So you went to the US in between as well, and Germany.
Yeah, so I joined OutSystems in like April 2015, I think, as a UX designer. Then quickly became UX UI lead. Eventually
Mm.
moved for OutSystems to the Atlanta office
Yeah.
to set up the team there. So to bring the global practice there, hire my replacement, who is still with us, that I'm very happy with.
Nice. Yeah.
And then set up the practice there, teach the local team, and then go back again. Then when I came back, I joined product management to bring all the knowledge from the years of experience in the field with all the customers into the
Yeah.
product. Um, then I took a detour. I don't know how fast you want to go. Then
No, it's
I
fine. Yeah.
left OutSystems
Yes.
for a while, um, primarily for personal reasons.
Mm.
And then I explored the product management space. So I was product manager at OutSystems. Then I was head of product for two startups, which didn't use low code, which was very strange for me at the beginning, how
Yeah.
long things take to build. Because I never came from like the high code space to the low
Yeah.
code space.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
started low
Yeah.
code, and then I was thrown back into the
Yeah.
old
Yeah.
fashioned world, which
Yeah.
apparently is still normal for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I was like, why do you deal with these issues? Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't get it. Um, but then eventually, being in product management, I really enjoyed. But these companies were a little bit too startup-y for me, and
Yeah.
startups have very good things, but also some more negative things.
Yeah.
And I got a phone call at one point and said, "Hey, do you want to from a partner?" And was like, "Hey, do you want to come back to the OutSystems
Yeah.
ecosystem?" And I was like, "Ah, why not? I like you can
Yeah.
work from anywhere, so as long as
Yeah.
you like, as long as we can agree, then awesome." And then being back in the OutSystems ecosystem, I got a phone call from OutSystems eventually and said, "Hey, we've seen you're back
Back
again.
in.
Would you
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
to come back?" I was like, "Why not? It's I mean, I love the team, I love the product, I
Mm.
love the work, and it's a great place to be. So I'm
Yeah.
happy to be back now for 2 years almost. Yeah,
Yeah, amazing. When you kind of had your break, and like you said, yeah, like you said, yeah, it's quite unique that usually someone's coming from a traditional background. So you kind of all you knew was low code,
local.
and yeah, and then you were thrown into this. How was it kind of? Were you kind of to the startups you were working with? Were you trying to suggest low code, or were they kind of just embedded in traditional?
I did suggest it. We did discuss it. And so I was head of product, and my right hand was this CTO, and he was like,
Yeah,
"But why would I do this? Why would I change everything? Like,
yeah,
what's the benefit? I mean,
yeah,
I think it was actually very good and healthy for me to feel the real world struggles,
mm,
hesitations, and fear that people sometimes have.
yeah,
And it's like we've been doing this for not hundreds of years, but we've been doing this for decades,
all
right?
the
So
time.
why
Yeah,
why change now? Or legacy is here. And it's like if you were at a startup where you only have a runway of X number of months,
mm,
then maybe at
yeah,
that point in time, changing and risking everything to get your proof point or to get your
yeah,
revenue out quick enough is maybe not the right thing. But it was very nice that I don't know, also before, whenever I worked with customers, they were already convinced, right? They already knew
yeah,
it, they already bought
yeah.
into it, they already did the training, they already
Mm,
they it's like when as an expert, like when you go to an account, they are already converted.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
might still hit some resistance,
yeah,
and you find a local architect
mm,
somewhere who's like, I don't know what this new
yeah,
thing
yeah,
is that this
yeah,
team does, but whatever. But at least someone in the organization already knows, right? And when you're on the outside, there's like you're the only one defending it, and it's even
yeah.
like, I don't know, it's like explaining to someone that really enjoys what they're eating that they
Mm.
should go try something else.
Yeah,
And
sure.
they're
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah,
why would
yeah,
I try something else?
yeah,
I
yeah.
like this.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah,
So, and it's like, I've been eating this for years.
yeah,
So, but that was really interesting. And up until today, they are still not convinced. So I guess I still
yeah.
have a job to finish there.
And your current role is head of solution delivery and experience with OutSystems.
Yeah,
Can you tell us kind of
correct.
what that involves and what's your day to day like?
So I do a lot of meetings. No, so as head of solution delivery, I work in the customer office team and specifically in the professional services team. And basically, I manage all the projects that we do. So all the engagement managers, all the TLs, all the devs, and the experience team. So the
Mm,
UX, UI, and front end team are with me. So that's a team of about 85 people,
wow.
internal, and then we have a bunch of external
Yeah.
contractors. And so it's really on the project delivery side, overseeing that as well as evolving the practice and the best practices that we do, which can come with partner enablement, which can come with the offering, which can come with
Yeah.
feedback to the product, which can come with all those kinds of things.
Okay. Interesting. And now that you've been working, it was 2015. You've been working without systems, so going
On
on
and
eight
off. Yeah,
years. Yeah, on
exactly.
and off. Yeah,
Yeah.
on and off. In that time, what would you say are some of the kind of key features that OutSystems have released that you think kind of puts them ahead or is a bit like a game changer for them?
In the last 8 years, that's a long time bucket. Um, well, I think right now, especially that's on everyone's mind, it's the what we're doing with AI, right? If this is
Yeah, sure.
below AI Mentor, if this is
Yeah.
more Morpheus, I think AI is embedded within the product. I think that's a major change since 2015. Um, and what I actually like is that the AI infusion throughout the company is happening at like three levels, right?
Mm,
So one, there's AI infusion in the product itself, thinking under the hood.
mm,
What is this developer gonna do? What do they need to do? Analysis, whatever. That is within the product itself. You can't really see it, right? Then you have the AI that we use in the solutions that we create. So for our customers, which is the second layer of AI, which is the more external facing one.
mm.
And then we have the AI layer in our day-to-day job. So how do you use ChatGPT, OpenAI, DALI,
Yeah.
Midjourney, whatever, as an engagement manager or as a designer or as a pre-sales or as a whatever, like what are, as a person, as an employee, for myself, for my team, what are the AI or Gen AI best practices, and how to help people understand that this is like, I always try to explain it that like the AI shift, it's like Grammarly. You should
Mm,
see
mm.
ChatGPT as Grammarly. Like it's
Yeah.
just looking over the stuff you're doing and making
Yeah.
improvements, fixing things, whatever. Because especially in the design space and in the dev space to some extent as well, there's a big fear of being replaced, and I
Mm,
don't need to. I won't have a job anymore in X
yeah.
number of years. I was like, well, if you have that attitude, you may not exactly.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you stand there, look at it, understand how can I use this to my benefit? How can I increase my operational efficiency? How can I as a designer become more creative? I mean, those are
Mm,
things that are changing as well. And there may be not changes in the product, but there are changes in the way that we work, the way that we think. Um, But I think I diverted a little bit from your
That's
original
fine. That's fine.
questions. Yeah.
And someone who's kind of dealing with, working with so many projects, is this something before, these kind of features were released? Is this something you were being asked about quite a bit?
Asked about by customers.
Customers, yeah.
So I think customers they are more curious, right? They're more.
Mm.
I feel there's a huge what's gonna happen vibe in the
Yeah,
market. I think
yeah,
people are really thinking, oh, but is this relevant for me? Yes or no? Um, Even like if we go back to the example of ChatGPT, right?
yeah,
So they recently launched their enterprise version that you can now have your own clone of the model that yes, you can put customer data in there because it's protected and enclosed and whatever. Because one thing that's still scary at the beginning is okay, I can't just upload 500 user stories in here and have it write test cases for me because there's customer data, there's sensitive data, there's everything that I should not be putting in a public
yeah.
facing tool. And these things are changing, but I think customers are asking, and also in version workshops, it's like, okay, but what are the possibilities? What are the options? What are people in the market doing? What are the kind of AI based or AI driven solutions that are working well? Um, so, but so there are a lot of questions, but they're not questions. Can you do it? They're questions.
Mm.
What's happening? I
Yeah,
think that's
yeah,
more the vibe at the moment.
yeah, yeah. And someone who, like you said, you kind of get known as the UX guy.
Yeah,
Someone's kind of been working with OutSystems for so long, kind of from our perspective as a recruiter of doing OutSystems and things like that. It's very rare we get a requirement for a UX UI designer.
yeah,
Sometimes we'll get a requirement of, I need someone who's both a developer slash UX UI designer.
yeah.
And what's your kind of opinion on one person kind of doing everything versus each project needs a dedicated UX UI designer?
That is a very good question. So let me think how I can phrase this in a good way. So some things that come to mind immediately. UX UI is agnostic to the technology you implement, right? And if you build it on low code, if you build it on high code, if you build it on OutSystems, if you build it on a competitor, it doesn't matter in itself. The only difference is what is the UI kit you use to implement it, right?
Mm,
But even the UI kit, it contains buttons and drop downs and carousels. I mean, even what is there is not OutSystem specific. Like we're not the only
mm,
technology that has
mm.
buttons, right? So
Yes.
I think that people should understand that. So one, UX UI is agnostic to the technology you implement, which is why being a UX UI designer for OutSystems doesn't really matter. I mean, I could take the whole
Mm.
experience team, take it out and put it on another technology, and we could function
Be
more or
fine, yeah.
less the same, right?
Mm,
Now there are some things that are easier to do on a certain platform. So as a designer, you might want to bias them to not put a global search on a mobile application because
mm,
searching 5 databases whilst expecting the user to have a pre-filled list of items is maybe not the best thing to do. But
mm,
then again, it's the same if you build it on anything else. Um, so that's item one, which is also why there aren't really specific OutSystems UX roles out there.
mm.
Same counts kind of for engagement managers, I guess, though.
Yeah.
I think if you are so I do think that the designer profile for low code is slightly different than the designer profile for high code. Then you have a slight difference between project designers and product designers. I
Mm,
think that's also an important split. I think in low code, you need to be extremely pragmatic. Um, Designers by nature are creatives,
yeah.
right? They want
Yeah.
to make something beautiful. They
Yeah.
want
Yeah. Yeah.
to all that stuff,
Yeah.
which is great. But in low code, where the emphasis is speed and quality and just building things quickly and fast because it works and it's easy, You also need to make concessions in the way that, no, but I have this pattern available out of the box. This one is for free. And the one you're proposing, I need to develop for 3 days because it's a nice, cool spinning wheel, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and I think that is a special skill set, but that is pragmatism more than understanding the technology, right? Then the second part of your question, should a single person be able to do the full width? I do see a trend that the product is becoming so much more powerful that a single person can do more.
yeah,
And I think it's a logical trend that, I don't know, maybe you don't need a full-time QA anymore because QA can be
yeah.
optimized. Maybe you don't
Mm,
need a full-time UX UI anymore because the UX UI can be optimized. Or it's so easy to just drag and drop some things, or you have pre-built patterns, or with Morpheus now, you basically
yes.
get the full skeleton of an app there. I mean,
Yeah,
you don't need to design much. But on the other hand, it's the same as using the pre-built templates, right? All that
yeah,
Morpheus does is selecting all those pre-built templates or creating them. Um, but as a good designer, I think there's also, it's not rocket science, right? You have top bar
mm,
navigation, sidebar navigation, and maybe another one if you're really creative. You have a page which is a title with a filter or a search or an input, and then you have or a table or a form or whatever. Like you can really deduct the 80% of the screens to very simple, clear interactions. Um, and that requires like a pragmatic designer rather than
yeah,
a I want to make everything pretty, or
yeah,
no, but
yeah.
I designed a complex filter last week. I want to do something else now. I was like, yeah, but it's
Mm,
still a complex filter. Just copy,
yeah,
paste, change the
yeah,
color,
yeah,
and you're
yeah.
80% there. It's like, and um, and that's I think a skill that good developers can do. And the more
Yeah,
powerful the platform becomes over time, that moves as well into the front end space, like making front end more
yeah,
low codable, and making the design piece then as well. Because at the end of the day, I think we're very close to um, tools like Wix and WordPress and
yeah, yeah,
Weebly,
yeah,
where you just have a store of 1,000 templates of a landing page, and it's
yeah, yeah,
literally say, "Give me another one, next,
yeah,
next,
yeah,
next,
yeah,
next."
yeah,
And I'm convinced that spending 60 seconds looking through 60 templates, you can find a better design than sitting down for 4 hours and creating something from
mm,
scratch. That means you need to start thinking as a designer, should I be spending all my skills on making the best possible design in Figma, or
mm,
should I spend my skills on becoming the best possible consultant or advisor of what
yeah,
kind of patterns and experience and flow makes sense at this stage, right? Um, and that's scary for some people because that
mm,
means change, and change is always
yeah.
scary.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. My next question on that kind of fits in well because obviously when we have like a traditional developer trying to convince them to come over to low code can be a challenge. And the
Yeah.
things you said on the design side, even though you say you can kind of pick up your team and move them to something else, do you find the hiring, and you might not be involved in this or might not know, but trying to convince kind of a UX designer who's kind of very much kind of not worked with low code, very different style. Do you find they're quite easy to convince, or can it be a challenge just like developers? Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's I have been involved in this and I am involved in
Yeah.
this, and I remember numerous conversations. So the biggest hesitation, and maybe some people that I'm talking about will watching this, so I will try to protect your
Yeah.
who you are. But there have been people that come to me and says like, no, but the OutSystems UI kit is so restricting as a designer.
Mm,
It's like, no, but I have these patterns now, and it's just all I'm doing is like putting the pieces into place. Like there's
yeah.
zero creative freedom. Like as a designer, I can't think about, oh, but what should it be like, or do my research on Dribble for
Mm,
hours and get
yeah. Yeah.
inspired. And then you get inspired for something that doesn't exist. So
Yeah.
what's the point? And now I know I'm quite down to earth, and I can be a bit cold to some people sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, You don't have to admit to that. That's fine. No, but but that's what I hinted at earlier. I think um OutSystems UI and the design kit that we have and the UI framework that we have. First of all, it's not raw rocket science. A button is a button, a drop down is a drop
Mm,
down, and a table is a table. And second of all, it's an accelerator to be able to create experiences faster. So you need to switch in your mind instead of saying, I only have these pieces to create something. It's like, okay, I have these pieces, they're pre-built already. What can I make with them really easily? And
mm,
what can I and also then eventually you can teach designers, okay, but you can customize this pattern to do XYZ, or you can break this pattern to do something else, or build a new pattern from scratch, but wrap it up in a low code way. So you put it on a shelf. So it technically becomes OutSystems UI component plus one, right?
mm.
And then you have your own kit. And we also see partners who build their own
Yeah,
kits with their own advanced stuff. And
yeah.
that way, it is not restrictive at all. It's just the beginning. The only difference from a design point of view is that you don't start from scratch. Now, if you want, you can wipe it all out and start from scratch, but then the
Mm.
TO architect will come to you and
Yeah,
ask,
yeah,
what were
yeah,
you
yeah.
thinking? You applied for the wrong job, right? So,
Yeah.
um, but there's a lot of resistance at the beginning because um, there's the perception of the technological restriction, whereas what it actually is a healthy discussion of what is technologically wise, reasonable, and smart to do, and how can you use the strengths of the platform rather than trying to reinvent the wheel that's really not necessary.
Mm, mm. It's interesting. Yeah, because we don't get that many kind of UX roles, and then when we do, when we're trying to recruit for it, it can be a bit of a challenge.
Yeah,
So that's why I asked the question. Um, going back to kind of what you said before, how you were exposed to traditional after low code. I'm
yeah.
assuming in your current role in your time at OutSystem now, you've been involved in processes where you're going to a new customer to convince them to purchase OutSystems. Do you
Yep.
feel you doing that stint with traditional has helped you with that process because you can kind of talk from both perspectives?
Um, yes and no.
Okay.
So I would say yes, it helps me in understanding their resistance and their pain.
Mm.
No, as in not every person on high code that you speak to will become a convert and an
Yeah.
evangelist of low code
Yeah.
afterwards, right? So, um, and I think when you talk to prospects, especially, it's the thing I found really is like you need to show by example. Just
Yeah.
build a POC, showcase something quickly, train their team, and have their team involved. So even like the most powerful thing you can do is enable a champion or enable a
Yeah.
small team, a small innovation team at a large
Mm.
company, have them build an application or have them do a hackathon or have them
Yeah.
do a POC of whatever, and then present that back to their own managers or their own board or their own whatever. Say, like, listen, it's not the marketing material speaking. It's not if you hire professional services, you get it done in 2 weeks.
Mm.
It's like, no, these are your guys. They built
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's really the most powerful trick in the book, to showcase that it's true. I mean,
Yeah.
to showcase, yes, you can learn this easily. Yes, you can build this easily. And yes, we do have developers all over the world that can help you get this done.
Mm. Mm.
Um, so I think that helps. The experience of the high code, I think it's really on the understanding the resistance, because before that it was
Yeah.
just a story, I guess. And now I
Yeah.
know a bit of
Yeah.
the feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Of course. And these customers who are kind of you know, doing these projects, do you feel kind of, well, from our experience, from what we see over the last few years, especially when you see kind of the names of customers who are adopting low code, it's obviously getting bigger and bigger, much
Yeah.
more well-known companies. Do you think
Yeah.
that's because of just the platform evolving, or just kind of sometimes, they might see other companies are kind of adopting? We found, for example, during COVID, our requirements, for example, went up quite a bit for
Yeah.
developers. So
Yeah.
the assumption was there must be more people taking on low code. Do you think that's because of, obviously the speed side of things, and kind of then thinking we need to invest in something to kind of get things moving as fast as possible?
So I think it's both, right? I mean, yes, we're becoming bigger. Yes, we're winning more awards. I mean, we
Mm,
recently in the Forbes 100, we went
yes.
from say 61st place to 44th place, and now
Yeah.
30th. So if you plot that, we'll be
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
top in like 3 years,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
more. But so yes, there's more news. I think word of mouth is very powerful for us.
Yeah.
Happy customers attract more customers,
Yeah.
because they trust. Like if another CIO or CTO goes to a CIO or CTO dinner and they
Yeah.
talk to each
Yeah.
other,
Yeah.
they know they've been through the pain, and they
Yeah.
have done the adoption, and they got like, so once they know, it becomes a lot easier. And across the world, the pool of people that know is just growing, right? So, and
Mhm.
that we
Yeah.
see has an impact. I also think the product is evolving faster and
Mm.
faster, which means that is goes nice hand in hand with the fact that we're exposed to a wider audience, as well as we have more to offer.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing you mentioned during COVID and stuff, I also think that, well, low code has been around for a while. I mean, we were the
Mm.
pioneers, but it's expanding.
Yeah.
The concept is becoming more accepted, and it's also the more larger companies, and that also counts for government or whatever, like the
Mm.
more slower pace organizations, so to say, they are adopting as well. And like they're not gonna pick the first startup and shift their entire way of working, right? So I think
Yeah. Yeah.
we've had the decade of trial run, and now there are enough success stories that bigger fish can try it, and then even bigger ones and
Yeah.
bigger ones. And we have huge global accounts. I mean, and they're
Yeah.
super happy, and they're like,
Yeah.
how is it possible that we can operate at this speed? I mean,
Yeah.
the number one thing that these large big accounts come to is like the agility that we have now, in the ability to change. And it's not change apps, it's change direction, right? Adjust to the
Mm.
market, adjust to new needs, adjust to this thing called AI popping up all of a sudden and
Yeah.
changing
Yeah. Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
And if you can't change, I mean, well, you can change, but if you change like a big ship, it takes you like 10 years in the market to
Yeah.
rearrange how a 20,000 developer or organization would go. With low code, they can at least have one department that can do a U-turn and go the other
Yeah.
way if they
Yeah.
have to,
Yeah.
right? So I think that speed and flexibility and that ability to change fast, that is what people are most attracted to, because as a leader, that is your biggest risk in a market that is changing fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and as you said, like the demand is growing. The sizes of the accounts are growing, which actually
Yeah.
comes with another adoption challenge. But
Yeah.
um, because training a team of two is very different than training a team of 1,000.
Yes, of course.
And even you should question if you need a team of 1,000 from day one or
Yeah.
ever. But yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, but that's really exciting to see, because it also keeps us on our toes, or having to evolve and
Yeah.
cater to the new customer and partner type, which is knocking on our door, right? So, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Cool. And talking about kind of some of the customers and projects, not mentioning customer names, but could you talk about one specific project that you may have really enjoyed working on?
Without mentioning the
If
name
if you're
or
allowed, but I
country
don't know
or
if you're
industry.
allowed. You can if you want, but I don't know if you're allowed.
I think I don't know if I'm either. There are a few big accounts I've really enjoyed working with. Um, I think what is most interesting about a lot of accounts is that once you work with them for a while, you get to know their industry really well, and you get to know things that otherwise you would never.
Yeah.
One of my first projects was with a customer, and I learned it was actually my first project, and I sat in a vision workshop, and we spent 3 days discussing the evolution of mortality tables. So it was an insurance company, and it was like, what is the likelihood you will die, right? For
Yeah.
each person type, for each employee type, for each age,
Mm.
for each gender, for each everything. And I was just so amazed by that after week one. I just had joined, and there was like within my first 2 months or so. And I was like, you know what? This company, it's something for me. And like, whenever
Yeah,
I tell that story to people, it's like mortality tables. That's what that was the trigger for you
yeah, you have
to
a weird
no,
interest.
but
Yeah, yeah.
no, but it's just you you get to see behind the curtain of how companies operate. And if
Yeah,
this is a global shipping company, if this is a government, if this is an educational system, if this is a bank, I mean, you just get to learn how the world works. I mean, that's one of the most fascinating things. And then because it's low code, the average 1 year project takes 3 months. So you
yeah,
get to know 4 times as much as you would otherwise.
yeah,
And then as a designer, you're often only involved at the beginning, or especially at the
yeah,
beginning, like cracking the nut of what the solution should be, and then you can move on. So basically, you join a different company each 2 weeks or each
yeah,
month.
yeah, yeah,
And this is not really a story about one particular
yeah,
account, but you kind of feel that you get onboarded in every company that you work with, because at the end of the day, you've understood their business, you've understood their problem, you've understood their pain points, and you've proposed a new solution that merges the business goal with the pain points, with the experience that they're after, right? Um, and that's extremely exciting for someone who gets bored easily. So I
yeah.
think this was a great fit for me.
I think yeah, a similar thing when I speak to developers is, especially ones that have come from traditional to low code. They may have been working in traditional for one project for several years,
Yeah,
and they'll
yeah,
say, "Look, I've been working for the same employer for 2, 3 years, but I've delivered multiple different projects, which has kept me interested and not really looking to
exactly,
leave. I'm not bored on the same thing again and again.
exactly.
I'm going to do kind of different projects, different domains, and there's always kind of an excitement and happiness compared to other guys who are kind of bored, like you
Yeah,
said, bored of doing the same thing for a very long time.
yeah. And it's even, I think, the cost of rotating someone in a low code project is so much lower than the cost of rotating
Mm.
someone in a high code. So it's also gives you freedom, as in even if your project is a year or whatever, you can change quite easily. And the cost for the project, the cost for the customer,
Mm.
the cost for your account, it's really not that high because it is a standardized way of building, and it's a well documented way, so it's pretty easy for someone to pick up. And basically you're free, you can do whatever you want, right? So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that's very attractive to a lot of people, because if you need to read the 20,000 lines of code before you understand the
yeah,
basis, I mean, that's not attractive for anyone. Even that can
yeah,
be a resistance to move somewhere else. It's like, oh, but
yeah,
here I know everything.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's like,
You're used to it.
and
Yeah,
exactly. So, um, and I also think that the people you work with, a lot of people have like this similar my mindset, right? They like to work faster. They like to work in bigger, complex things. They like to work with smaller teams, so to have a more close relationship with your
yeah,
peers rather than being an anonymous guy on shelf
yeah,
number
yeah, yeah.
12. So you find a lot like-minded individuals, that all kind of have this hunger to build, to deliver, to innovate. And I think at the end of the day, independent of what your job is, the best thing you can have is the people around you. And if you have a natural filter to surround yourself by people that align with what you want to do, I think that's a very good place to be because it protects you from assholes. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well said.
I don't know if I'm
And
allowed to use that word.
and you may have had these conversations in the past or not, but one thing we kind of like to ask everyone is, what would be your, maybe for you it could be different. Usually the question is, what would your message be to kind of developers who don't believe in low code? But, what would be your message to designers who don't want to consider working with low code?
Well, I guess the designer as I am, the initial answer that I come up with is why not?
Yeah,
But because any good designer asks more questions than they give answers. Um, I don't know. I don't understand the resistance of trying something new. Like if someone says, "Hey, this is better, this is faster, this is easier, this goes the extra mile. With this, you can build more complex solutions. With this, you get more exposure. With this, you open up all the career opportunities that you want. And with this, you can learn. Like you learn about solutions, you learn about the business, you learn about the technology, you learn about yourself, to be honest. Um, why wouldn't you try? And I don't think there's any harm in trying. Um, I don't know. Yes, there's a bit of resistance, but I guess I kind of compare it to the resistance we see in the adoption of AI, right? A lot of people are
yeah,
a bit scared and they try it out and it's like a gimmick to do something funny with once.
mm,
But no, it's here to stay and we will need to learn and adjust and adopt to it. And low code kind of is the same. It's here to stay. It will evolve. And if you're not part of the wave, you'll be left behind. Now, saying you're going to miss out is not the right argument to convince
yeah,
someone to do it. But I think it's really, there's no cost in trying. So why don't you try?
yeah. Good answer. And in just a little over a week, you'll be speaking at the One conference. Can you give us a bit of
Yes.
insight of what you'll be talking about? This will be released before that, so it'll be good to know a little brief of what you'll be talking about.
All right. So yeah, I'll be talking about impactful UX strategies. I think a lot of people they copy the traditional UX UI methodology to low code, um, or they have this fake designer role that just produces screens. And I think what we're trying to say is to share our experience of having done this for a decade or more and what are the tips and tricks as a designer in your low code team? Um, how can you be the most successful, support the EM, PM, PO, BA, whatever kind of business type role, and support the devs? And there's also a bit about if you don't have UX UI in your team, then what? Like, am I just using the off the shelf stuff? Or if I need to break something, where do I go? Because we understand also that the reality is that a lot of project teams, you don't have a designer at hand. And at the end of the day, everyone is a designer, right? If you create something, you are a designer. If you want it or not, I don't care. You are. And it's a bit about that. So,
Nice. Well, yeah, I'll see you there. Um, and just a final question, for you, kind of any kind of professional or personal kind of, goals ahead to look forward to, or you're kind of trying to achieve.
um, I don't know. I don't have a specific goal. I mean, um, there are people that want to have a certain title, that want to have whatever, that want to. I don't
Yeah,
know. I've had my fair share of things that I've done. I think. Um, I really enjoy what I'm doing, and I love working with people. Right now, I have a big team, um, and I think for me, work is like energy game, right? You
Yeah.
can work 8 hours, but that doesn't mean you're like, so if you spend 8 hours of your battery, it doesn't mean that it recharges at the same rate.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you're in a bad job, you lose more energy than you gain, or exactly. Um, and you can work 16 hours a day. I'm not advocating overworking here, but you can work 16 hours a day. But if you truly love what you're doing, you can get maybe 20 hours in of energy in return, right? So, and you can work 4 hours and be mentally brain dead, right? So
Yeah.
I think when you talk about goals, it's really just I wish for myself and for everyone else that like think about what is the energy consumption balance of what goes in and out, um, and then try to increase your responsibility and your reach and your impact without damaging the healthy balance that you have of the hours that you spend and what it costs and gains. This is a bit of a cryptic answer, but I think as long as you wake up and you have the energy to do what you want to do and you get more energy out of what you want, I mean, that's the place I want to be, and that's the
Yeah.
place where I am, and that's the place where I want to stay whilst growing in what I do.
Nice. And you've done a bit of traveling. Are you now kind of staying put in Amsterdam for a while then?
That's a good question. So yes, I've lived in 7 countries and been probably to about 60. I don't know. Who knows?
Time
I
will
guess
tell.
exactly. Time will tell.
Well, well, thanks for your time, Ben. It was really good to talk to you, and I look forward to
Thank
catching
you so
up
much.
next week.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Menno.
All right.
Take
Bye.
care.